with the proviso, the reminder to everybody watching, we are seeing exactly one side of these negotiations over a sit-down meeting between the president and Mueller. The Mueller team doesn't talk, and as far as we know, they don't leak. So, Robert, is this all kind of a TV game show we're watching? Is any of this truly serious or binding, and will you believe any of it until it happens?
Your healthy skepticism is right on, Brian, because I've been talking to Mayor Giuliani in recent days and keep urging him. We'd like to see this letter, the response you've given to Bob Mueller and his investigators. But the president's lawyers will not release the letter, so we're relying on their accounts. And they continue to reiterate that they don't want to have the president sitting down with Mueller to talk about the firing of Jim Comey at the FBI, to talk about then National Security Advisor Mike Flynn and what the president said to Comey about letting it go. And as Giuliani says, they really believe Mueller has a perjury trap here. But Mueller, he is trying to finish this report based on our reporting with federal investigators. And he's trying to get it done before September. But he needs to figure out the president's intent. And until the president sits down, Brian, he's not going to really have that.
Barbara, you're the lawyer here. Real quick on this phrase perjury trap that we hear on a near daily basis. I've heard some lawyers like you on TV say, listen, the truth will set you free if you tell the truth, that those around you tell the truth. There's no such thing as a perjury trap. What do people mean by perjury trap?
Well, at least at the Department of Justice, the idea of a perjury trap is forbidden, and that is when you have no legitimate purpose for calling someone to a grand jury other than to try to catch them in a lie. That is, you don't believe they've committed any other crime, but you're going to try to catch them in a lie so that you can charge them with that lie. I think in this instance, it's clear that Robert Mueller has a lot of legitimate questions that he wants to ask of President Trump. And the idea that it's a perjury trap, I think, only exists if he chooses to lie.
Now, Jonathan Lemire, the question for you, which may call for a judgment, is what is greater, do you think, in the Trump camp, the fear of a subpoena or the fear of perjury?
I think they're worried about both. I mean, they believe they have legal arguments to protect them against a subpoena. They don't believe that the Department of Justice, in the code there, that Mueller would forge forward that. He's certainly a by-the-book prosecutor, we know, and that they believe that they would not forge forward that. So perhaps, therefore, it's perjury. I mean, everyone, as I've said before and what I reported before, people around the president just feel that he is, it's walking into a landmine situation if he goes in there, that he's so undisciplined when he speaks, and that he sometimes will try to say things to win over the room and to curry favor with these investigators. He's going to walk in there and say some mistruths or say things that aren't right or be selective in what he says, and therefore, as Giuliani says, walk himself into perjury. I mean, the president, though, at least at this point, is publicly saying he still wants to do this. I think the longer this goes on, the more that the Giuliani and the legal team moves the goalposts, sort of making it almost impossible for Mueller to finally agree to this. As much as special counsel does want this interview, as Bob just said, they need to be able to identify, they want to figure out the intent, what was behind the president. Actions when he moved, whether it was Comey or Flynn and so on. But at some point, they're going to have to make a decision. Well, if he's not going to sit down, then we think about the subpoena. And I think that at this point, Giuliani and others, they're trying to run out the clock here. They know that Mueller is trying not to wade into the midterms, that if he doesn't do it then, he tables it as of Labor Day, let's say, and revisits in November or December, even though, of course, we did see Jim Comey open up a federal investigation that absolutely mattered to an election just about 10 days before voters went to the ballot boxes.
And more on that in just a moment. Barb, I watched Giuliani with Sean on Fox tonight. It was interesting. At a certain point, Giuliani stopped talking about this. He kind of deferred to Jay Sekulow. Is it possible one of the feds said your side should really stop talking about these negotiations? And B, what are the feds likely to make of all this public sharing of letters and demands and no questions on obstruction and the like?
Well, ordinarily, the Department of Justice doesn't want to silence people who want to talk. They have First Amendment rights to do that. And so I'm sure they don't like it. They probably aren't happy with it. It may not even be accurate, but they're probably not going to do anything about it if Giuliani and Sekulow want to continue to talk about it. I don't think it advances their position in negotiating by talking about it in the public sphere. But I don't think that the Justice Department is going to order them to stop in any way. But yeah, you're right that the effect of it all, though, is that we get this very one-sided narrative. We don't even know whether it's true. They've made representations about their letter. We haven't seen the letter, and certainly we're not hearing from Robert Mueller, so we don't know what it says. But I do get the sense that they're slow-walking this. They're trying to get themselves as close to September as possible. Say we're negotiating. We're still keeping the door open because they know that as that election approaches, it's less likely that Robert Mueller would serve that subpoena and launch what's likely to be some, very explosive litigation.
Also, Barb, what is Rudy talking about when he says this investigation will violate DOJ rules if it goes past September 1?
Well, he is conflating some things here, and I don't know whether it's intentional or not, but there's sometimes something referred to as a 60-day rule. Before an election, there's usually a cooling-off period. The language of the rule really is very broad. It just says prosecutors shouldn't do anything to influence the outcome of an election. And what you do or don't do really depends on the facts of the case. But many people have interpreted that to be sort of a 60-day rule that says when you get 60 days out of an election, you probably should cool off and not file anything publicly. So with the elections in November, that'd be about Labor Day. And so I think there have been many people suggesting that Robert Mueller would be unlikely to serve a subpoena then. But to suggest the investigation needs to be over by then is a very different thing. Even if he does go into a cooling off period, which he may or may not do without Trump on the ballot, nothing says he's got to be done by September 1st.
Bob, on that point, no one expects Mueller to do anything incautious, A, and B, one of the hardened cynics in our business proffered this theory tonight, and that is that by saying September 1, by getting that out into the bloodstream, Rudy, who is a member of this team that says nothing really by accident, usually it's back referenced, may be getting into the public consciousness what he sees as a wind if and when Mueller suspends on or about September 1st for election season. They can say it's been properly, this investigation has been paused, and that's a victory for us.
That's right, Brian. Talking to Mayor Giuliani, you see him preparing right now for the subpoena fight. That subpoena threat goes all the way back to March when Mueller made it in a private exchange with then-Trump attorney John Dowd. The Republican Party is on edge, especially after Tuesday's primaries in Ohio and elsewhere, about the midterm elections. They don't want to have the Mueller report hanging over their heads. So in my conversations with Republican lawmakers on Capitol Hill, they're telling the White House, they're telling Trump allies, they're telling Giuliani and the president, anything you can to get Russia off of our plate, we'd appreciate it. And they know they have to take a tough line on sanctions. The party's more hawkish than the president on Russia, but they want this Mueller report to be not hanging out there as a variable. And so that's why, in part, this is a political strategy for Giuliani as much as a legal strategy.
Jonathan Lemire, I want to read you the quote. Two very young, promising writers at the Associated Press have worked together on this piece. Oh, look, it's you and your co-author. Trump has seethed to confidants that he views the Manafort charges as a warning shot from Mueller. He has told those close to him that as he watches the courtroom proceedings, he fears that Donald Trump Jr. Could at some point be the one on trial. Left out all the careful sourcing that you were careful to put in this. You're just back from Bedminster, New Jersey. How's the president enjoying his vacation?
We haven't seen too much of him on the vacation.
Exactly the way they planned it.
That's right. He did have a dinner with business leaders last night. We saw the first few minutes of it. But largely, he's been laying low. The White House isn't reading out who he's been speaking with and golfing with. We know, though, that over the last 10 days or so, we have seen, and it's reflected in his tweets, as well as these private conversations, how upset he has been watching the Manafort trial day after day. It's the cable coverage. It's in his face. It is mostly you.
Yeah.
Inescapable every day that he sees it there, and that it is. As he's told people around him, he feels like that's Mueller's sort of opening act. That even though this trial, of course, is not about Russia, but he feels like it's Mueller's hand is involved. Obviously, Manafort was a prominent part of his campaign, and it's a sense of like what could still be to come. And even though the president tells people around him he doesn't believe his son did anything wrong, but he suggests that either A, he inadvertently broke the law, perhaps, or B, he's simply the victim of a witch hunt. Stop me if you've heard that before from the president. And in this case, he feels like that could be next. And that is something that even though publicly he's suggesting that I'm not worried about John Jr., Privately, he is. Don Jr. himself also very much taking this brash approach, moving forward. He's become a very popular surrogate among Republicans for the midterm elections. He's been crisscrossing the country, so he is not letting this slow him down.
Big thanks to our big three on a Wednesday night in August. Jonathan Lemire, Robert Costa, Barbara McQuaid. Thank you.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.